Ladies' prerogative, just saying.
All right, the Bothell City Council is now back in session. We are on AB 16-108, which is a public hearing to consider adoption of resolution approving the 2017 through 2022 six-year transportation improvement program. I'm going to officially open the public hearing, and we have Steve Morikawa from the Public Works Department to provide a staff presentation.
Good evening, Council. It's going to be a very brief presentation. We had a June 7th study session. We had one before that as well. And essentially what I've done is taken comments in terms of form and format and put them in here. So the six-year tip, one of the questions that was brought up at the study session was which projects are on the transportation impact fee list. So what we did was where you have the double asterisk, those are the projects that you collect impact fees for. We wanted some format numbering to make sure that on a map you could correlate it with the line item on the spreadsheet, so we did that. The descriptions, we put the numbers there again for ease of getting to each particular project description. We tried to go through the entire description again, and where we could, we beefed up the descriptions of the projects to give everybody a little bit more idea what they're all about. The draft design needs list for transportation projects, we put numbers on that for, again, ease of identification. Again, I'm going to remind you that this is kind of the wish list now. It's not the six-year plan per se. This is where we're going to keep projects that we cannot fund, but we want to keep track of so we don't lose them. It's not part of the six-year tip. The last thing I want to say again is that we are planning on using the capital facility plan process to do the heavy lifting, the public involvement program, the prioritization for funding. And once we go through that CFP process, then we will come back again early next year and we will modify the six-year tip to match that. So the transportation projects in your capital facility plan match the projects on this list. And with that, I'll open it up.
Great, thank you. So public comment, I have nobody signed up for public comment. Would anybody like to provide? Mr. Ewing, please provide your public comment.
Patrick Ewing, former mayor and council member and planning commissioner. So the tip, for the longest time, ever since I've been involved in the city, had a project on there, the East Riverside Drive Trail. This would be a multi-use trail that would run from Bothell all the way south to 124th. It's in the King County's comprehensive plan. I don't know if we can get this changed to work for me. So it's up here on the top, it's Project S1, and if you look at the project description, it's Project S1 North, it's the Samash River Trail, running from Bothell from 102nd Bridge, basically down to 124th, and then there's a south project that'll connect it all the way down to Leary Way, so all the way to Renton. So it's a major recreational trail that begins in Bothell. It was in the comprehensive plan, it was in the tip for the longest time, and then for some crazy reason, the last council took it out of the plan. Now it's time for you to put it back into the plan. It's of critical need on East Riverside Drive. We've heard testimony in past hearings of no pedestrian options for most of the way. The bicycles are sharing the roadway. We need to get the trail back in the plan. The reason why is sidewalks are very expensive. We did put a portion of the sidewalk in, but it's a terribly expensive project and we don't have the money in the budget to complete the sidewalk. And that's only on the south side, and it doesn't help the bicycle traffic. I brought this visual aid. So this is my bicycle. I was hit commuting home from work last night by a car because I was using the road. It wasn't on East Riverside Drive. It was on 527 that has a bike lane. But the reason why I'm showing this is there is urgency to taking this action. I know the staff said that the King County, it's not high on their project list, and that might be true, but it is in their TIP or in their needs list. It used to be in our TIP. The reason why you need to put it in the TIP is because it has to be in the TIP for you to apply for grants, right? It's got to be in the TIP to apply for grants. Now that the North Creek Trail is getting completed, this is the next project. Recreational trail project. I was served on the Transportation Policy Board when I was your mayor. Rails to trail projects like this, recreational trails, they score very well. It's a high likelihood that this project would get a grant if we applied for them. Now, we didn't apply for them before because we were working on the North Creek Trail. We gave it the priority to get it done. And now it's nearing completion, thank goodness. But now we need to get the East Riverside Trail back on the tip, and so that we can get grants for it. Now, the other thing here is the process, right? I was one of the biggest advocates for the longest time for getting the tip done by July 1st when it's supposed to be done. So I'm a very big advocate for that. But now this process, we had what? One study session, one public hearing. The public hearing is the same night you're supposed to take action, right? It's like a fait accompli that, you know, you're going to adopt something that the public doesn't even have a chance to come down and talk to you about. That's nonsense. You guys got to fix the process. You got to have some real public hearings, a chance to modify your plan, and then adopt it. So,
Could you wrap up your comments, please?
sure. So it's urgent. You need to put it on your TIP. You need to do it tonight. Staff can get this done because it's a plan that used to be there. They just got to put it back into the plan. They've got the information. So tonight, adopt the plan, including the East Riverside Trail in the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to provide public comment? Seeing none. Let's have a, do we have a motion and vote to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to close the public hearing. So I heard the voting buttons do work now. Maybe not. They're blinking. There we go. Oh, whatever happened to Councilmember Freed? Did he get back to you? None? Okay.
No answer.
Passes unanimously with Councilmembers Spivey and Sandberg absent and excused, and then Councilmember Freed unexcused. So, council deliberation? Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for staff, if it's possible to get East Riverside Drive included on that tip, and what would the process be for future projects for the community to advise the city on future projects or other projects that they wanted to see on the tip, the wish list, I guess is what you call it.
So again, this year we went out with a combined 6-year tip and CFP public process. We had multiple open houses. We also went out through social media, and we went out through email, and we asked for input in projects that wanted to be seen on the 6-year tip as well as CFP. And again, we are coming back in about 6 months with the 6-year tip again, after we go through the process of the CFP, which really accounts for the funding, which is what we're trying to change here from the previous years. In the previous years, we had a wish list, and we basically said, this is our 6-year tip, and we had projects there even if we knew we couldn't fund it within the 6-year period. And it gets a little confusing when you go out to the public and they say, oh, it's on a 6-year tip, and it's likely to happen within a 6-year period, and that's not true. So what we wanted to do was make it align with the CFP. So we would use the CFP, which basically we go through that. We have a committee, we get public input. We would prioritize things, figure out what we have money for, and then adopt the CFP. The CFP typically follows right into the budget for the next 2 years, and the budget mirrors what the first 2 years of the CFP shows. And then we would have the 6-year tip basically mirror the CFP. So whatever you see on the 6-year tip has some sort of funding. It doesn't mean it's going to be funded throughout the whole thing. In other words, you could have a project that's only funded for planning or design. You don't have construction funds yet. It would still show up because you're spending money on that. So we could certainly put the East Riverside Drive Trail on if council wants it back on. And then again, what I'm going to say we're going to do is go through the CFP process and discuss all the projects that are recommended or desired. And depending on the funding and what's the priorities, it could remain or it could drop off, depending on whether we feel we can afford it within a 6-year period.
In order for us to get grants on a project, it has to be in the TIP, is that correct?
Typically, yes. Not all state grants, but all the federal ones definitely have to be on the 6-year tip. And then there are grant cycles for that as well. It's not every year. Yeah.
So if we had a project that was a wish list project, like East Riverside Drive, and we weren't planning on applying for grants, or we didn't have a specific project yet, but let's say that another transportation project at a federal level fell off and they weren't able to complete their project, those funds then came available, would we be able to apply or apply for that grant because it's on our TIP?
Not in the federal process. So we currently finished up our federal process for Snohomish County and King County. The way the federal process works is if you don't turn in an application at the time they're due, you're out of luck for that cycle. Even if money comes back, they're not going to consider new projects. What they will do, and what a part of our strategy is, let's say there are 40 projects that get submitted and only the top 20 get grant funding because there's a limit. There's always a limit on money. So let's say our project is number 21. So in the grant award, they would tell you you didn't get money in this cycle. However, they typically create a contingency list, and it's also prioritized. So number 21 to 40, if you're number 21, you have the best chance if money comes back. So let's say a project of $2 million comes back, and the next project is ours, and we want $1 million. We could take that money, and there's another $1 million for the next person. So that's part of our strategy on the tip you see here is we applied for a lot of grants, many of which we knew we weren't going to get. But if we scored high enough and we're on the contingency list, a year from now, we could get a call that we have more money available.
And is that the tip every year or every 2 years?
The tip is every year, and we can update the tip as often as you want. The only requirement is you hold a public hearing and you have a council vote on it. So you could do it every month if you really wanted to. Most agencies try to get it done by July 1st because that's what the RCW says you're going to do. What we're going to try to do is switch our timeline, and we're going to try to get it done in January or February using the CFP as the rigorous process for the prioritization and the public output.
But we could add projects to the tip throughout the year if it comes to council.
Sure. So let's say funding dropped in our lap and we could afford a project and we wanted to move forward with that, we could certainly put it on the tip. It doesn't have to be on the tip for you to do a project. It would have to be a tip to get certain grants require it.
Okay, thank you.
Interim City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize because I'm new to our process and the whole discussion, and I hear great things about Mr. Morikawa and his work and everything. I'm hearing something that's a little different process from what I've experienced in other communities. Other communities, I think as you articulated, the 6-year tip is by the 6th year, it's a wish list. Maybe year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is kind of a real priority order, but year 6 ends up being, and everything else we might ever want to apply for a grant on. And the confusion always is, the community says, oh, well, it'll get funded in year 6. No, it's just going to keep getting bumped until funding's available. So year 6 becomes a placeholder. What I hear you saying is we really want to make it more realistic and have it align with the capital facilities plan, so the TIF and the CFP align, and then they drive the CIP, which is kind of a 2-year driver. Is that what I'm hearing?
Essentially, they're one and the same. The CFP, the difference with the CFP will essentially be, it's not only transportation, it's all capital.
Okay, so you're saying they'll be aligned, the TIF and the CFP will be aligned, but what about the projects that would otherwise have been on that year 6 wish list that aren't going to be there, whether it's the East Riverside Drive or anything else that's for some reason not on it?
Sure.
How is that going to work unless we're always constantly coming back and updating it? My only concern is I don't want to cut us off from being able to put items on a wish list. How's that going to work? I agree with, we don't want the community to think it's going to happen faster than we think we really can get there. But on the other hand, my experience has been if it's not on that list, you're not going to get any money.
So, and this is kind of modeled a little bit after how Snohomish County used to do theirs. So they have a 6-year TIP, which is realistically what they think is going to happen in 6 years. And then they have a design needs report. And essentially that lists all the other projects they want to have done, but they don't have funding for. And that's kind of what we're proposing, is to have a design needs report that lists every other project, because we have a lot of projects that need to be done. We do our comprehensive plan, update every 6 to 8 years. And out of that list comes capacity projects we need to do over a 30-year period. So you don't want to lose track of those either.
So
It's in your comp plan.
paraphrasing then, there'd be another document.
Yeah.
I mean, going from sooner to later, there'd be the capital improvements program, there'd be the CFP and TIP, which would be concurrent.
Right.
And then there'd be this yet additional document that, what'd you call it, the Snohomish County calls it?
Well, we're calling it a transportation needs list.
A needs list. So that would be someday I hope I get some money to be able to do this list.
Right.
Okay. Is that good enough to then, with that list adopted as a part of the process, is that good enough to then use to go for grants if we see a likely candidate?
It would have to be on a 6-year.
Okay, so it would have to get back. That's the
Yep.
point I was getting at. So why wouldn't we maybe list that as year 6 of the TIP, recognize that it's a wish list, a needs list, but we still have the ability to go for grants?
We can do that. That's what we used to do. We used to also get confused about 6-year TIP and CFP,
Yeah,
because every year with the 6-year TIP, you're trying to prioritize things, and transportation projects don't move through that quickly.
right.
So you spend a lot of time trying to prioritize the 6-year TIP, or not even prioritize, but see what's going to be on it. When in reality, what's really prioritizing it is the funding that happens every 2 years in the capital facility
Well,
process.
that was my question, Mr. Mayor, and I think what Mr. Morikawa's outline for you would work. My sense is the process of doing this additional update after the first of the year, I think you could come back to it. The reality is, anything that we're likely to get funding for in the next 3 to 4 years is going to be on the front end of that list anyway. That back end list, the needs list or the wish list, we're not going to get to that sooner anyway. So I think you ought to continue this discussion maybe in January and maybe go forward with what's suggested, and whether you add the, I keep looking at my notes on the
East Riverside Drive.
East Riverside Drive, whether you add that now or not, I think that's a separate issue. I was more concerned about the conversation we had the other night, where my experience was year 6 of the TIP is kind of a wish list, and that's what we were just talking about. So there might be a better way to include that in January and maybe go with this, get this thing going so that we can build the capital improvement program for the budget and get those priorities clear. But I wouldn't want to cut us off from being able to go for some grant dollars.
Now, if I may, that being said, we are going through the capital facility plan process, and you will have a committee gathered in August. And if the East Riverside Drive is a high priority, then certainly make that known, and that's something that could be considered in that process. And if it's determined there's funding and there's the will to push that up, then so we would come back again, it would be on the CFP, and then it would be on the 6-year tip.
Do you, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Steve, do you know why it got off when it was on and then it was off? Was there some reasoning for that?
I think why it got off is essentially the question mark on moving forward with the trail itself. King County, it's really King County right away. It's not city right away. And King County, we would really need to work with King County to get them moving, which if
But
that's
it's on
desired,
their
we
list,
should do.
apparently.
It is on their list. But when we approached them about starting work on it, clearing title, because there are some issues with title and railroads and things, there's not that impetus to do that. And I think on East Riverside Drive, there's also another discussion we have to hold too. I mean, the trail is something that everybody would want, and it would be great. We also need to think that if it would take us a little while, because King County's slower, it's going to cost more. We have to get grant funding, which we may or may not get. Do we want to fill in the south sidewalk gap and finish a sidewalk, which, we have cost estimates for, and we can do the relative cost thing. So there's a little bit of issues on whether are we ready to move forward with that. And again, if it's a council desire to move forward with that, we can certainly go and pound the door in King County and see the likelihood and the schedule and what we could do from there.
But is there some reason we couldn't get it in the tip tonight and then still go through this process to determine where it fits in priorities?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McNeil, were you done with your questions
I am
and
done.
deliberation?
Thank you, Mayor.
Did you have any other deliberation you wanted to, did you have anything else you would like to say?
I am good, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Agnew, any comments? Deliberation? Deputy Mayor?
I'm in support of adding the East Riverside, and then we can talk about it further in the CFP process.
So I had the same concerns that were raised by the public comment about asking for, having a public hearing on the same night that we make a vote on this Transportation Improvement Program, which is, everybody says TIP. And the reasoning behind why I'm comfortable with moving this forward tonight is that this was really not a stopgap measure, but intentionally done before July 1st so that we are eligible for grants and our TIP is adopted before the state requirements for it to be adopted. We're trying something new with our CFP process, and so we are going to look at the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, in January. And so to me, this is just more, we're doing this public hearing and voting on this tonight because we need to do so just to align the two processes, and hopefully it'll be more streamlined. Sounds like it's something that staff really want for streamlining our process and trying to figure out the capital facilities plan as well as the TIP. And then adding East Riverside Drive Trail, I don't really have any issue with it. Obviously, it's not something that's going to be dealt with in the next 6 months, but it'll definitely be part of the CFP conversation. It sounds like it's been noted to explore it as an option. So I'm okay. So we would have to make an amending motion to add the project. And Steve, the project is the East Riverside Trail? Is
East
that the
Riverside
appropriate?
Drive Trail, if you want to call it, or we can say multimodal path if we want. It would be from 102nd to probably the city limits, I would imagine, is what we're looking for.
Okay. So I think we're done with deliberation. It is, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to add the East Riverside Drive improvements to the TIP.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to add the East Riverside Drive Trail from 102nd to the city limits to the TIP. Is there any discussion on the motion? No? Go ahead and place your vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the project was removed. It was on there originally, it was removed, and we're going to be putting it back on. Is there anything that we need to be concerned with that process?
So just real quick, from a process standpoint, when we have a motion on the floor, so we can't ask questions.
Okay.
But you could say, I hate the idea, or whatever you'd like to say.
Okay, no problem. I'm good.
You're good? Okay. So let's go ahead and place our votes. Go ahead and place your vote again. It worked that time. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Sandberg and Councilmember Spivey absent and excused, and Councilmember Freed absent and not excused. So now we still have the business in front of us to actually approve the recommended action is to adopt the proposed resolution approving the 2017-2022 six-year transportation improvement program. Moved and seconded. Moved by Councilmember Agnew, seconded by Councilmember McNeil to adopt the proposed resolution approving the 2017-2022 six-year transportation improvement program with the amendment. It's not really an amendment, but with the addition of the East Riverside Drive Trail. Go ahead and place your vote. Is there any deliberation on the motion? No. Place your vote. Again, passes unanimously. Councilmember Sandberg, Councilmember Spivey absent excused. Councilmember Freed is absent not excused. So moving on to our next agenda item is AB 16-109, public hearing concerning adoption of the 2015 State Building Code with local amendments and consideration of proposed findings, conclusions, and actions, and a proposed ordinance. And we have Frank Shasky with the Fire Department and Mike Delac, the Community Development Deputy Director. Oh, and let me officially open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Frank Shasky, Deputy Chief Fire Marshal. Also have with me tonight Mike Delac, Building Code Official. And we have before us a public hearing on our 2015 State Building Code adoption. Last week I gave you the full slideshow, and tonight I'm giving you a summary of what we discussed last week. The RCW establishes the state building code. We talked about the number of codes that state building code encompasses. We also talked about our Washington Administrative Code and how it provides for this regular three-year updating and mandates enforcement of by all local jurisdictions. Jurisdictions may adopt local amendments provided they are not less restrictive than code adopted through WAC 5150. And we proposed a number of amendments for you. And then the state building code is effective July 1. The significant local amendments, just very briefly, International Fire Code Section 510, that's emergency responders communication. I discussed how we're trying to limit the number of DASs that go into buildings, only require them where they're absolutely needed, and just because they're that expensive and they cause other technical difficulties when there's too many of them around. We have a warning before you enter an oxygen deficient atmosphere. That's in lieu of the liquid carbon dioxide systems that are becoming very popular out there. And then we were changing our hydrant location and standards from the Bothell Municipal Code. We mentioned also on the building side, the International Existing Building Code is now adopted as a standalone. As well, the Swimming Pool and Spa Code, a standalone code. And then there are some adjustments to the design wind speed for our region, increasing the design criteria on that. Moving forward, and this is coming from the discussion from last Tuesday night's study session, there appeared to be support for consideration of a residential fire sprinkler ordinance. We heard question about do we incentivize residential fire sprinklers. We use them to mitigate when developers can't meet a standard to help continue development. But left us with a question: is there consensus for the council for staff to initiate discussions with our water purveyors and the development community to pursue such an ordinance for future consideration? And then with that, Mike Black and I are here for questions.
Okay, great. So we have it on our agenda that we would do public testimony. I have one person signed up, which is Mike Pattison.
Good evening again, Mike Pattison with the Master Builders Association. We would support you adopting the state building code update this evening. The premise that there is not a mandated single-family residential sprinkler component to it. There's benefits to the building code update, energy efficiency, savings to homeowners, and so forth. It's worth going forward at this time on that. But like I said, we would be opposed to, at this time, considering a fire sprinkler mandate. However, we're more than happy to sit down with water purveyors and city staff and fire service to have discussions with the city and those entities about sprinklers in the future, barriers to those. And I'll admit that we are generally very strongly opposed to those, but we're always happy to have discussions about those barriers. So we'd be willing to do that in the interim between this building code cycle update and the next, and we're willing to sit down at any time to have those discussions. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Agnew.
I have a question for you. Why are you so opposed to sprinklers?
Well, I did send, am I still on? Yeah. Cost, they're very expensive, and we have invoices in some cases where they're $7,000, $8,000, and $9,000. It depends on the condition of the site you're working with. And I know there's efforts to bring those costs down. It's been done at the state level and local, but cost and we haven't, what I believe is an honest disagreement with fire services generally on their effectiveness. It's our view, if with modern construction standards and working smoke detectors and other devices, you're equally as safe as if there are fire sprinklers. But I will stand here and say we are going to have an honest disagreement on that with fire services. It's just always going to be that way. But cost being the number one concern.
Oh, you'd have that disagreement with me too.
Okay, I understand.
Great, thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to comment? Nope, okay. So council, questions of staff? We were asked for some feedback on looking at the single-family sprinklers into the future, obviously not as part of this amendment, so.
And I definitely am in support of hearing more on the fire sprinklers.
Okay, did you have you have no other questions for staff?
No other questions? No?
Okay. I think we know where you stand on the looking at sprinklers and single-family. Deputy Mayor?
I would have to say I'm opposed to fire sprinklers at this point. We've raised traffic impact fees. We're likely to raise park impact fees. I think there's a limit to what we should be adding to the cost of a single-family home. I just think it's an affordability issue. And I guess when I read the report that is standing on your stack over there, I think there were 40 house fires in Bothell. That's a lot of cost for a lot of homes, and there are 40. To me, it seems like a very small number.
So we don't have our whole council here anyways, but I guess there's nothing wrong with having a conversation. Obviously, I'm not in support of it tonight to say, yeah, let's make fire sprinklers mandatory in every single-family residence. We don't have nearly enough information to understand the implications that poses. Sounds like the Master Builders Association is willing to meet with you guys to discuss it, so I don't see why we would stand in the way of moving forward with the discussions. And then I don't have any other questions on the proposed changes. So Okay, so do we have a motion to close the public hearing? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to close the public hearing. Place a vote. Passes unanimously with 3 people missing. Let's leave it at that. All right, now we need to have a motion to vote to approve the proposed recommended action. Moved by Councilmember Agnew, seconded by Deputy Mayor to approve the proposed findings, conclusions, and action and the proposed ordinance adopting the 2015 state building code with local amendments. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, place your vote. Passes unanimously with 3 council members absent and absent. Okay.
Yeah, again, I feel like I'm coming late to the party, but I just don't want anybody at home to be confused. What you did was an update to the building codes and the fire codes.
Correct.
What you also had was a discussion about, do you want to have a future discussion about residential codes? But that is not a part of what you just enacted.
Correct, that was not
Yeah,
part of the vote.
And I understood that, but I'm not sure everybody at home did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we did not vote to have fire sprinklers mandatory in single family. All right, so executive session? None? City manager report, do you want to delay your report till we have more of a council here, or do you want to do it tonight?
No, I think I'll catch up with the missing persons and deal with them separately. But I think there's 5 things I'd like to update tonight. One, we have been moving forward with the ethics officer has been moving forward with the review of the complaints that have been filed. And I think there was some confusion as to what the role of the ethics officer was, which is by ordinance to review the complaint and the responses. And there was some question as to whether the officer was also authorized to compel testimony or further investigate beyond what statements were there. And it's pretty clear, and I think the city attorney sent some memos out and stuff, that he's to review the record. He's not to go out and create additional inquiry. That may or may not be what you want to do, and we may want to have some future consideration or discussion of that. But the measure on the complaints themselves are moving forward. The complaint by Mr. Stedman, we should have received a response by the ethics official today. We'll probably maybe get it with today's date tomorrow. And then we've got until this Friday, I think, Scott?
Friday for the next one?
For the Spivey complaint?
The Spivey complaint,
Please use your microphone button.
sorry. The Spivey complaint is in process. Council member responses, if they are going to be filed, are due on Monday, the 27th, and the ethics officer will have 10 days following that to issue his decision.
And just so everybody's clear, the code, when there's a complaint filed against officers of the city, the code allows the city manager to provide outside counsel to those members in their response and complaint. I've asked Scott not to do that because his job is to advise you as a city and the city council as a whole, but working with individual members, we've got separate legal counsel that will be contacting those affected parties, and they'll have to get their responses in. I think, anything else we need to say on that, Scott, at this point?
Not really. I guess the only thing that I would add, however, is that the 3 memos that our office has had to prepare related to these complaints, which would be a sufficiency review of the initial complaint, the Stedman complaint, the same kind of review for the Spivey complaint, and then the ethics officer had inquired of our office, how does he interpret the code in order to apply it? All 3 of those memorandum are available if anybody wants to ask for them.
Available to the public.
Available to the public,
Yeah.
that's what I meant to say, yes. So you've seen them all. Yeah, but that's the only thing that I would add at this point.
Second item I wanted to get with council is I'm hoping we can nail down this workshop date. I know some members of council had some plans for some other events in their lives, and but I'm hoping that the Friday the 15th evening and Saturday day, the 16th, that we can nail that date down. If so, we'll move forward with that assumption, because I really need to I'll finish up my one-on-one interviews with the council members. I'll prepare a summary of what I've heard for that, so you can all see kind of the consensus. That'll help us move Saturday's discussion a little faster. But I need to get that done to coordinate with what the finance director's been doing on the budget. I'm trying to get the two to dovetail, so. And then the other thing that I had hoped that we might have a meeting in August, but I've been disabused of that idea, or abused of that idea, I guess, both by staff and members of council who had other things they planned for their lives. Anyway, I'm trying to fast track the discussion on budget and finance, and I'm hoping that by that last Tuesday of July, rather than early August, we'll move our effort as staff faster. But I'm hoping I can get you a snapshot of how the finances and the budget are starting to look, and then we'll get to work very seriously in August in working through the details within that framework or that snapshot. And then I would like to get back with you, and we'll get it in the agenda order in September to give you what a draft of the budget looks like before we go with a public introduction. And I want to get that public introduction done in early October, not mid-October. I'd like the community to have a look at what the budget looks like before they have to vote on the levy lid lift and the other measures that they have to decide on. So I want to get all of my part of it done as early as I can, so the community knows what we can do with the dollars we have, and then what would be additional, if you will, if the levy lift is approved, or in Snohomish County, the public safety sales tax, which also affects the entire community here. So that was my item 2.
Interim City Manager, did you want us to sound off on our availability on the 15th, 16th, or do you know kind of where the 4 of us that are here,
If
we can make
people are
it?
going to tell me no, if you know now that you can't do it, I guess I'd tell me now, but I've talked with the others. They've said they could work their schedules around, so I'm hoping we're there.
Does anybody outright can't do 15th and 16th? All right, you're good to go with this.
All right.
This
I will-
4.
I'll be there. We'll see who else shows. But I think, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 3, I did want to update you on our interviews on Monday with 3 city attorney finalists. And officially, the city attorney is appointed by the city manager, as are all the other employees. But I would really like to get you to meet the individual that we're intending to appoint. And I'm suggesting that we have an exec session at the start of next Tuesday's meeting and get you a chance to meet with him. And I'll get you some information out about him, but we're going to try to meet with him on Monday to see if we can put together the framework of an offer and an agreement subject to council's giving me a thumbs up or down. I'm not going to ask you to vote in exec session. But if you go, I'm just not comfortable with this guy, then I'm not going to appoint him. We'll continue on with interim counsel. But if you feel that he works as well as staff was very impressed with him, and all the attorneys involved, including his former boss, who used to work for me, and I got a chance to talk with that person. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, because we haven't got a formal deal. But anyway, everything's checking out about this individual's legal skills, and the staff feels he's going to be a good fit with the staff. We need to make sure he feels good about us. So I do want him to meet with you, because the city attorney has a very special relationship with the council as well as working, with the staff. So if Monday works, we'll try to get him here on, if Tuesday in exec works, we'll try to nail it down with the candidate on what we think an offer looks like. And then, subject to your guys' chance to meet with him and talk with him, we'll make an offer officially shortly after that. Or not. If we don't, then we'll go from there. Item 4, and we've got some items coming. Barbara's still over there, but she's been very busy over the last 6 months, I think, or so. But we've had this Bothell community conversation discussions that have been going on, and they're essentially structured focus groups. But I read through the results of all of that this weekend, and we're trying to figure out how to pull that together, and we'll have a meeting coming up at some point in the near future to let those who participated say, yeah, we got it right, but also for those that didn't have a chance to participate, to see what their neighbors and the thinking of the process was, and essentially make sure the community sort of grows that consensus around what these Bothell community conversations are telling us. And they're clearly telling us that streets and sidewalks are important. We're definitely hearing that, so you've already figured that out. And last item, there's a meeting, and I think we got a volunteer from council according to Catherine, but there's a meeting this Thursday, the 27th at 1:30 at the Sound Transit offices and down at Union Station on the Sound Transit 3 proposal. And if anyone can make that, they want to make sure we get some elected officials there. It is one of those things that staff really can't do. And we've got a 5-city coalition that's in support of what's in the ST3 package for the Bothell community, includes bus rapid transit along the Bothell Highway, includes a transit parking garage in our town center, so that'll help with a lot of the traffic and all of those others. So, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, and Mayor Baker from Kenmore will also be there. So, anyway, those are the 5 items I wanted to update council on, and I'll make sure that our absent council members know where we are as well.
Councilmember McNeil, did you have something to ask?
Yeah, so I did volunteer to go down there
Oh, you're
on
with the
Thursday.
volunteer, huh?
Yes. So we're just going to stay with our same support? Is that correct? The letter we supported, the 5 cities?
I'm assuming that, unless council's
Okay.
changed their mind, but
Okay.
I hope not.
Well, I just want to make sure if there's anything they're going to request of me as a volunteer going there, so.
So we're past the 9 o'clock cutoff for the meeting. I didn't notice, and we didn't extend. So I think we're done.
I'm done, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, do we even need to make a motion to adjourn if we've already went past our cutoff?
Oh, I think you should make a motion to adjourn,
City
yes.
Attorney?
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to adjourn. Do we want to hit the buttons? Okay. Passes unanimously, we're adjourned.